Hey, it's Tim, Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk, and I have a special treat for you today. Have you ever been on forums, argued with people, ever been on Facebook arguing with people, which most times does happen, about whether or not you get your dream truck? I got the video for you. I have my friend Fred Akins. That's not Atkins. He's not doing diet stuff. Akins from California, who's going to explain to us his past history as a product planner. And we're going to talk through some of the features on trucks and why they maybe not go as mainstream as you think, and why certain trucks, Dodge Dakota or the Kia truck he's going to talk about, did not make it production yet because of, well, what's going on in the marketplace. So welcome, Fred.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
So for these people that don't follow you on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and MeWe and all these places we have these days, kind of give us a little background on who you are and your experience.
Well, I'm a former product planner. I've got and marketer. I've got experience with Kia, of course, and before that Mazda, and before that Honda's ad agency, and at the start of my career, Subaru's product planning department. So I've worked for a few of the Asian car makers.
And in those product planning departments, you've also had experience with like Ford and Chrysler and GM through people coming into your marketplace.
Exactly. The people I worked with had experience from Nissan, Ford. I've worked with some people from General Motors. So a lot of experience, 30 plus years of experience in the car business.
And Fred wrote a really good article on why the Kia pickup didn't come out in the marketplace early 2000s, if I recall correctly. I'll link to that article down below. I don't want to touch too much on that. You can go read that, check it out. It's really interesting stuff. But I thought we kind of let's do the too long didn't read on product planning. People understand, because I think a lot of times, especially in the comments I read, people think it's the CEO makes all the decisions or the chief engineer is in charge of everything, and that's how things come to the marketplace. But really, when you learn about these companies, product planners have a really big role in what comes out, right?
Right. Well, product planning is basically sort of a nexus of a lot of different disciplines. So there's certainly some science involved with data and being able to read and interpret the data that you get from research clinics and what's happening in the market. You follow the marketplace and the trends in the market, and then you distill all that down. And there's also a little bit of art to it, because you have to work with the designers, you have to work with the people who are developing the product, and you have to essentially, there's a little bit of crystal ball involved, because you have to predict what the market is going to want, sometimes before the market even knows it wants it.
Right. So you guys are really paying attention to what consumers want. And I remember we were talking about this, where you have like you do consumer clinics. You really pay attention to what your consumer feedback is from your products and make changes as need be for future products. But
Right. And what you do is you take the input from the consumer clinics and everything, but you also have to look very deep into how the consumer is going to use the product, what they want to do, what they sort of their unmet needs currently in the marketplace. And that's the big thing, is figuring out, like I said, before the consumer knows they want something, saying, we need to add this. Good example is a couple of decades back, all you could get was a regular cab pickup truck. And that was the same way for decades. And then somebody said, well, we want a little bit of space behind the front seats, so we'll do an extended cab. And that was good. And then people said, well, we want to be able to put people back there. And all of a sudden you had four-door crew cabs. And now four-door crew cabs are the bulk of the market, and you almost can't get a regular cab pickup truck anymore, except for base models that are price leaders.
right, and that's what really irritates people, because they want that manual transmission, regular cab, 8-foot bed with roll-up windows, which is pretty much impossible to find anymore. It just doesn't exist. And that's why, part of that dream pickup. But when you talk about trucks like that, you think those features, one of the things we talk about a lot that you've talked behind the scenes is all these accessories you get now. Now we have these off-road packages. Now we have these bigger tires. Now we have the bigger screen, but it only hits these trim levels and things. I know we had talked about, pricing as a whole kind of different animal. You kind of feed the people what you want to do. They come back to you with stuff. But There are cafe implications, some fuel economy implications when you do some of this stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. Especially for something like the um, the big wheels and tires, the 35-inch wheels and tires. Those, because of their rolling mass, uh, they do bad things to fuel economy. Now, the people who want them sort of don't care about the fuel economy, but the manufacturer has to care about the fuel economy, and the feds, the federal government, has a rule that all of the manufacturers have to adhere to, that if a certain option is on more than a third of the vehicles, let's say the big wheel and tire package, um, then for CAFE purposes, fuel economy purposes, they have to factor that in to their calculations, and it reduces the number on the window sticker.
Yeah, and a lot of consumers, whether they like to admit it or not, talk about fuel economy in trucks. And don't put your Prius comments down below. I do fuel economy videos. You guys watch the heck out of those, so I know you guys care about this stuff, and that's a big issue when you start looking at trucks and how much fuel they could burn. Because usually with truck, you have what I call the mileage penalty, where you're going to add utility, but you have to pay the additional fuel cost to have that utility of that vehicle. Looking at the marketplace though, like currently we have such an explosion in mid-sized trucks. And I was curious about this because the Kia truck you talked about in the article, which I'll link again below, was like going to be a mid-sized truck, and we have so much energy now in the mid-sized space. Did you take into account the marketplace, the competitors, and how much volume is going to be there when you're developing a product bring out?
Right. Well, this was back. This was back in the early 2000s. The concept truck, the Kia Mojave that we showed at Chicago in 2004, was a mid-sized pickup truck, and the competitive set was going to be the Nissan Frontier, the Toyota Tacoma, the Ford Ranger, which was still around at the time before it went away briefly, um, and the, I think, Chevy S10, GMC S15. So that was sort of your competitive set, and Kia said, well, there's an opportunity maybe here for us. Let's take a look. We did the concept truck, got feedback on it, and unfortunately, the problem was that unless we had a U.S. plant to build it in, we couldn't build it and overcome the 25% tariff that the federal government levies against imported pickup trucks.
Yeah, and that's a huge cafe is a huge not cafe, but chicken tax is a huge issue. Cafe as well. What I'm curious about is as you looked at that, as you penciled it out, were you thinking that there was enough volume space there to be able to sell at a certain volume to make a profit?
Yes, we did look at the numbers. We thought if we had a good competitive design, that we could do somewhere between 50 and 60,000. We still wouldn't be one of the bigger players in the segment. You know, that would be the Tacoma and man, the Ranger and stuff. But there was enough volume there that it would give the Kia dealers something to sell. And you know, trucks are popular, especially in certain parts of the country, and that would have given us, our dealers, something to sell on the showroom floor in those areas.
And do you feel like with that volume number, is that an important number to have in that range? Because you'd have because you were going to take the Santa Fe and kind of make it in, was it Santa Fe into
Well, that's Hyundai.
Yeah,
Hyundai's doing the a truck that's sort of Santa Fe based,
right.
and they're still talking about coming to market, but I don't know what their volume plans are.
Right. And that, I mean, when you take an existing product and put a bet on it, right, in this case, that makes the volume case a little bit better because you're not having a one-off product, right?
Right. What you want to do is you want to be able to amortize as much of the component set and the tooling as you can. That's what Honda's done, let's say, with the Ridgeline, which is basically a lot of the components come out of their minivan and their Pilot SUV, and they just put them in a different package, a different shell, but the platform itself is related to the Pilot SUV.
And I think that's something people don't always understand is the car business, as much as it's enthusiast and people that get excited about cars and they love these trucks and things, it really still is a business in that you have to have capacity. You got to have the commonality of parts to reduce the overall cost. And you have the business case. When I talk a lot about business case of building a truck and having enough volume to put in the marketplace. And so when you look at the market, the way things are going now, in the article, we talked about this a little bit. Kia has a place now where they could build a plant. They could build it in the United States. They have a plant now. So, when you look at those, the wins of marketplace, and Kia just killed a couple cars, I think it was, the Cadenza and K900, the bigger sedans. Are we going to see more mid-sized pickups coming in from these Japanese producers? Could we see a Subaru Brat come back? Could we see the Kia come back?
It's entirely possible because the market has shifted. 10 years ago, it was two-thirds car, one-third trucks. Well, now it's completely flipped on its head, and it's two-thirds trucks and SUVs and only one-third cars. And that's why you see a lot of car nameplates going away. Ford's killed off a bunch of sedans. GM's killed off a bunch of sedans. As you pointed out, Kia's killed a couple of their bigger, slower selling sedans, but they've kept their sedans in the small and mid-size market. But the market and consumers, at least as long as fuel is relatively inexpensive, they've shifted what they want to crossovers, SUVs, and trucks, because they're more practical vehicles.
Yeah.
I mean, a sedan is not really a practical vehicle if you need to haul anything. And people have active lifestyles. They've got, especially this past year, everybody's spending a lot of time at home, and the only place they can go is Home Depot or Lowe's. So they get lots of stuff to work on their house.
I know my Menards credit card is full. Like I can't. That thing is maxed out. Because it's the only thing I've had to do around here was work on the house. So I got many projects done. I got a couple other questions for you, but looking from the product planning standpoint, did you ever come across something in your career? You've seen this in your career, where maybe a product planner wants a feature, wants something, and accounting has killed it off.
Yeah, I've had that happen on a couple of my product lines. Now, my product lines were the Soul and a couple of the smaller sedans, the Rio and the Forte. But I've seen that happen with all kinds of things. And if you can't make the business case to the bean counters, the finance department, you're stopped. There was one particular rear suspension that we wanted for the Forte sedan and coupe that we were willing to pay the $90 or $100 upcharge from the factory to put that in the car. But they wouldn't do it because the Chinese market didn't want it. And the Chinese market, and this is going to keep being the case, dictates a lot of what goes on with the overseas manufacturers. So if we could have built the car here in the United States, and they wound up actually building the Forte down in Mexico after I left, you might have been able to make the business case and get the tooling and everything and say, okay, for this market, for the U.S. market, since we've got a U.S. production plant, yeah, we can put that feature in. But if you're talking global markets, you're kind of at the mercy of the big dog on the porch, and that happens to be China.
And these companies keep going more and more global, more and more commonization of parts. I mean, we're just seeing that throughout the industry. I'm curious, just how much you know about how bring a vehicle to the marketplace. Like, what is the real cost? Like, if maybe have a ballpark. Like, if you were to bring a brand new truck in the marketplace, and you were spitballing the price, I've heard estimates in like tens of millions. I've heard hundreds of millions. I've heard all these estimates. What do you think the kind of ballpark price is?
Well, for a volume product in a big segment, let's say either a mid-size sedan or a full-size truck, if you're going to do a couple 100,000 units, which is in those segments, that's kind of a mid-sized player. You're probably starting at $1 billion for the entire program, the cost of the entire program.
And that's
And
before the truck gets even to the dealer lot. I mean, that's marketing and tooling and all.
right, and that doesn't include if you have to build a dedicated plant, because if you have to build a dedicated plant, that's another billion to $1.5 billion just for the plant, depending on the size.
So I mean, it's not inexpensive. So I mean, that's kind of the answer to, like, you know, the guys that want Dodge Dakota coming back. You know, you're looking at, you have to have plant capacity, you have to have the marketplace for it there, you have to have commonization of parts. You know, so really they'd have to take like the Durango and put a bet on it at that point to make it make any sense.
Probably, yeah. And the Durango, as I recall, I think the Durango is related to the Grand Cherokee, which is a unibody. And unibody, there aren't too many unibody trucks other than something like the Ridgeline. Most trucks are old school body on frame. And that means you need a dedicated design and a dedicated frame for the vehicle, and then you put a different top hat on it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes it even more difficult to bring new mid-sized players to marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, given all of the activity recently in the mid-size segment, a Dodge Dakota or a Ram Dakota could make sense. But again, it's a question of, does it make enough sense, and is there enough volume there to make the numbers work? Because, and the other question is, where would they build it?
That darn business case always gets in the way.
Yeah, because you can do a lot of fun things if you don't have to worry about the business case. You know, we tried to get a Kia sports car like the Mazda Miata. Business case, the volume wasn't there, and the business case just fell apart because you'd have to charge so much that you couldn't sell it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think those are the things people don't always think about when they think about the truck industry. Is it's less enthusiastic, less enthusiasm, more bean counters these days, more business case these days.
And has been for a couple of decades now.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Hey, thanks, Fred, for joining me.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Check the video out over here, website down below. As always, I'll see you down the road.